believe we're recording. Yeah.
Okay, good morning. Today is the NRBC meeting on October 7th, 9 a.m. We'll start with call to order.
Lucas Richardson.
Here.
Jermaine Sullivan.
Here.
Kathleen Grabowski.
Yeah.
Sarah Harless.
Here.
Jess Stallings. Here. Kayla Willem.
Here.
Public comment on agenda related items. Public comment. Approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. We don't have meeting minutes quite yet, but we'll have those for the next meeting, and then we'll have two pairs of meeting minutes to approve on the next meeting. So starting with unfinished business, so city banner update. The poles on Maple Street, I'm sure you've seen, have been removed now. So whenever those get put back up, I'm gonna start talking to consumers to get that scheduled. I didn't want to get them scheduled for the ones on the highway because then we'd have to probably pay them twice to come here. I might need you to send me that consumer's contact one more time.
Sure.
Just if you could.
Yep.
That's the update on that one. Mural process, I'm just gonna leave this on the agenda until we get that document, but it sounds like that might be put into the hands of the city attorney now. So we'll be waiting for that. And then we've talked about in past meetings about the renderings. Do you know, have you gotten anything from Corey?
I sent you info, have you?
Yeah.
Bummer, okay. Hopefully we can still get them to be interested in it whenever we get that document. All right, moving on to new business, introduction from Toby.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
If you haven't met me yet, I am Toby Van Ness. I am working with Josh through the police department to do code enforcement on anti-blight issues. We've been rocking and rolling for 6 weeks now, maybe 8, I don't know.
Since August, really.
It's been a good run so far. We do have 43 locations that I've either cited or sent letters to. So we are actively working with a lot of people right now to get their homes cleaned up and to get their trash taken care of. Some are working diligently at doing that, and some others are not. So they're motivated by citations, and that's kind of the way, the route I've been taking so far, just to try to educate the folks a little bit. Those that don't understand, sometimes junk is not junk in their eyes, and they struggle with that. So been talking to a lot of people, a lot of voicemails, a lot of communication, just explaining, the city of Manistee and how they want to make it a cleaner, safer place to live. So my history, I don't know, for some of you that don't know, I'm a former township supervisor for 12 years. I did zoning and basically just about everything in a township setting. Our township was right around 10,000 residents, so I understand the issue. We were more rural than what the city is, but experience the same issues and do the same things. So that's where I come from. I also have run several businesses in Grand Rapids area. I retired up here about 4 years ago and decided I needed to keep a little bit more active. So that's why I came back to work part-time, and and do enjoy working with the police department. So far they're very helpful, and things are just rolling along. So if you ever have any issues you want me to address, just reach out through the email system or leave me a voicemail. I'd be more than happy to take a round out there and have a look and start chatting with folks. Very heavily involved on Ramsdale right now. That's kind of the target street because there's several on Ramsdale. That whole area out there has probably been the most. There's a little bit up north, but mostly down in that area is where I've been mostly concentrating my efforts. So if you see me circling a block, it's probably going to be a citation time. I want all views and all, ways to look at a street or at a location. Usually if I stop, I am confronted by neighbors who want help that have a neighbor that's doing the same thing. So I try to educate then and chat with some folks, and people have been great, other than those that have gotten citations. So, any
Can I-
questions for me?
Can I ask you what you're doing with the house on McKee?
Which,
Key Street?
136?
Yes.
I can take that. We've received felony charges for the tenant there. Toby cited for his issues, and then Jerry Blue has asked for a court date for larger issues. That makes sense?
Yeah, is the house still condemned?
Well, it is, but we had an issue, people were going in there, cleaned it out, so we managed those issues.
Dumpster there, and it stayed empty, and then the dumpster was gone. So-
Right, yeah, so we went there Friday to educate whoever was there, and they had already cleared out and cleared the dumpster out. So I believe the city's intention, working with the city attorney, is to remedy that house, whether it be for demolition, but we've asked for a court date for that, to
Okay.
get in front of a judge.
It's October 15th.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I was wondering. Thank you.
Toby, is the best way for a neighbor who has an issue with light to report it to use the C-Click Fix app? Is that?
Yes, and that's happened several times now, as neighbors have called. I try to keep it confidential.
Yeah.
Usually if they ask where it came from, I'll say me. I say,
Well, it's just a lot of people blast it on Facebook, so I try to say, use the C-Click Fix app, and I just want to make sure that's the appropriate
yes,
directing people.
yes, to either leave me a voicemail or leave me an email, or call me. I'm here 3 days a week, so they can call, they can report it. I will go out, I will look at it myself before. Our BSNA software offers a lot of history, which is great. So if there is previous history, I will not educate, I will cite.
Okay.
That's kind of the way that I've been going. So if I look into BSNA and I see that police officers have had issues or conversations with the folks that live there, then we will go right to the citation issue. And I figure the education process is done, and they need to move on.
Thank you.
Yes?
What, in your experience, happens after the citation?
Citations are usually motivational tools. The first citation is $250. That's a pretty good motivation for some. Some just pay it and think the issue is done. It is not. And so then the second citation is $500, and that's even more of a motivator. I wrote 4 $500 citations last week, just because I've talked to the people, I've told them exactly what's expected, and we get no return. So then that's when and then we'll go for an informal hearing in front of the magistrate, and the magistrate can order that. My first informal is coming up on the 24th, so we'll see what the magistrate, what kind of her thoughts are moving forward, and try to work with her so she kind of understands and I kind of understand what's expected, and then she can order it to be cleaned up at that point in time. I have canceled a few tickets. You'll notice 64 Arthur had a pile of rubbish as tall as this ceiling in here of construction material that the police officers have been dealing with since probably May. I issued a citation there to the owner, not to the renter. That got the motivation rolling, and that is cleaned up now. And so I did cancel the ticket. I will work with people that work with me. The owners were very forthcoming and told me exactly what they were going to do and when they were going to do it, and they followed through. So I'll monitor that, and if they do that, then I will cancel the citation.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
In your experience, and you just said that you cited the owner instead of the tenant, does it seem like more of the tenants at the renters are causing the blight issues?
Yes, it's always the tenants.
Rental.
Absolutely,
Is it more rentals versus like actual people that own the home?
yes,
So,
yes. Long-term rentals are the issue that I work with.
I've seen a lot of it, and that's why I was wondering too.
Yep.
Back then.
But usually if you go after the homeowner, I mean, that's, the tenant can escape and walk away and not have any, and I think the homeowners need to be educated that they own the homes, and they are the ones that are ultimately responsible. And if we have to follow through, if the judge orders cleanup and nothing takes place and the city needs to go in and do the cleanup, it's actually going to go on the tax roll then, and then it's an owner situation.
I got a question. Obviously, it's gonna take some time for you to get like all the way caught up with all the blight going on, and obviously new blight cases keep coming up. Do you ever see yourself getting to a point where you might be able to do more types of enforcement on different ordinances, like sidewalks and noxious weeds and stuff like that?
I think the plan is, and can I share the plan? Or you share the
I'll
plan?
take it, yeah. So there's conversations going on, broadening his role and what that would mean, how we get there. His first year, I didn't want to overwhelm him with all the other things, otherwise it makes him ineffective, and we like to put our employees in positions to be successful. I know that as the snow flies and blight enforcement reduces, he'll be helping our building official with rental inspections as he needs it. So there are those conversations, and we'll work through how to get there.
Okay.
But the reality is the number one issue is blight, and that's why the position was created, so we're gonna keep efforts focused that
Yeah,
way.
that's the priority for sure. It's just, that sounds good. It seems like it's already helping the police department out a lot with
But what
enforcement.
it adds is consistency. When you have police officers enforcing blight, the schedules they work, they can't keep the pressure on, so to speak. And so with Toby, he's able to keep the pressure on, be able to actually work with residents when they are receptive. And so we found that effective. I mean, you could drive around, I could show you a bunch of locations it's already had an impact on. And the ones that it hasn't had an impact on, there's a solution for that too.
Yeah.
And I think Teresa will, that I do some zoning. You know, that is, my history has been in zoning as well, so I will help her out if I identify and I see some issues, or if she has some phone calls and can't make it out there, or have somebody, I'll do that for her as well. So I have been doing some zoning things, some violations I have written under the zoning ordinance. So my eyes are peeled for all that stuff.
That's great.
I can't drive through a neighborhood anymore and not notice this stuff, no matter where I go. You know, I live in Fountain, I go home and I'm like, boy, they should get a citation. I mean, that's just, you know, that's just in my blood now, and it's been there for 20 years, so that's just where I'm at. And so I do notice that zoning stuff too, and I will cite it if it's a violation, or if Teresa's received a email or a phone call on it, then I will go out and check that for her. And also write it under the zoning. Yep.
Any more questions? Thanks, Toby.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to master plan discussion. The last couple meetings, we've talked about adding items to a list. I got a couple people respond, but not everybody, so I just wanted to put this on the agenda one more time before I made a map up. Is there any more comments on that? Okay. Going into ordinance review, a couple meetings ago, we wanted to put ordinances back on to maybe see if there's any more recommendations for the ordinance committee for, I think we're gonna look at the anti-blight and the sidewalk ordinance. I think this is something that you wanted, Jermaine.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to pull up, I guess?
Right now? Sidewalk, probably.
Sidewalk ordinance, can we pull that up? Unless you just had comments on it.
I do, but I don't know what my comments are right
Okay.
now.
Well, I have one thing. Yeah, I understand.
Next
Sorry,
meeting.
we can do next week. The one thing I want to say about this is the last time we talked about the sidewalk ordinance, it seemed like we had some good ideas, and I think some of that stuff got relayed to the ordinance committee, but I think we're still at the point where we don't really know what to do about the maintenance of the sidewalk, right?
Yeah, I think it was the sidewalk and is it sanitary ordinance or safety? One of them, we were trying to completely get rid of that ordinance and put them in but
I think there was an effort to organize and streamline. I think what the mayor's saying is there's a piece of ordinance here and a piece of sidewalk ordinance here. And I think the intent was to streamline it and have one ordinance that pertains to all issues related to sidewalks. That's the conversation I recall.
Okay.
Because you've got sidewalks and Riverwalk at 1024, and then somewhere else sanitation, there's something that regards not blocking sidewalks. And the conversation, as best I can recall, is if a city resident is looking for anything related to a sidewalk, they should be able to click on the sidewalk ordinance. Blocking it, maintaining it, don't ride on it, whatever it is, that's the conversation we had.
that's what he said, yes.
Got it. Well, this is kind of a good segue into my question to Toby too, is like this 1024-01, maintenance and repair by owners, and it's talking about conflicting with the ordinance, but if nobody's enforcing that ordinance, clearly, there's nobody that's enforcing that ordinance right now, then how do we adjust this to be more appropriate to what the city's actually doing? That's what I wanted.
I don't know, that's a police department question. Let me understand so what do you mean by not enforcing? What do you mean by maintaining? So in my mind, it's.
We get questions brought to this commission about, hey, should we clean that sidewalk up? But if the ordinance says that the owner's supposed to be doing that, why are we, it seems like a circle of whose problem is this? Mm-hmm. So that's why I don't know if there's a recommendation we could say to alter this a little bit to say, I don't know, that there's an actual citation that they can issue for it. I don't know, but I got a couple more questions when we get to the next item, but.
Yeah. And I think this is a multi-layered question that comes up, more so for us in the police department wintertime is, why doesn't the police department enforce people not shoveling their sidewalk? And I think some of the things I've heard is that we live in an elderly community, and do people have the ability to shovel their sidewalk? And are we gonna start writing 80-year-old people because they physically aren't able to do this? So that's kind of the position that we've had, is it's complaint driven, and we get there and assess it. We don't have resources for police department to patrol the sidewalks actively, so it's always been complaint driven. So if someone has a specific complaint, we go out and evaluate it. But I want to just caution you that there's a lot of issues related to these types of things. Why isn't it being maintained? Whose responsibility is it? I know we have an ordinance that says the sidewalk is the landowner's, but understanding that the city also has some obligation too, as far as the city can't transfer their liability onto the homeowner. So maybe working through that and figuring out what your question is and what specifically you want to take a look at. I mean, just having this conversation might be good for us to assign this one ordinance and have the committee possibly red pen it and come back with those notes rather than real time trying to chop it up. That's just a recommendation. You can do what you want, but that might be a little more productive use.
I agree with that. I think I just wanted to mention it. And I mean, you said it right there in your response, I mean, which is great. The fact that the sidewalks, can't be, you've taken the policy of not enforcing safety from shoveling the sidewalks. So that shouldn't be in the ordinance then, right?
Well, it's complaint driven. We don't proactively enforce that.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems to me like if you have an ordinance, it should be enforced. And
Yeah, I'm not saying we don't enforce it, it's proactive.
Right.
So if someone complains, because we just don't have the resources to proactively patrol sidewalks all winter, we have other things that we have to do. I don't think that's very realistic, but sometimes you get, an issue where we get a snowfall and the sidewalks haven't been shoveled, and is that an issue? Or a business that's plowed snow on top of the sidewalk? I think those are probably two different issues, and that's why it's complaint driven. Our officers go out there and evaluate it, and we had an issue last winter. We had a private snowplow company was plowing snow on top of sidewalks. No fault of theirs, no malintent. They're trying to, this is their livelihood. We went out there and educated them. They had 6 or 8 businesses in town. They said, oh, I didn't realize that. And so we remedied it that way. So we usually enforce this on a complaint basis.
So can we put this ordinance and the safety or sanitation ordinance on November meeting?
Yep.
We'll just go over that and.
Okay.
It would also be my assumption, just based off some of the things that Chief is saying and what I know in my own job, considering board policy, there's probably some things in here that, like legally, you can't remove, even though they're not enforced other than by complaint. I'm guessing you, as a city, you have to have that in your ordinance. It's not something you legally remove. So while you might want to remove the snow thing because they're not out every day making sure everyone is shoveling their sidewalk, it's probably something legally cover all their bases that they have to have as well. So that would probably be something that once we mark this up, I'm assuming it has to go through another process.
It does, and so any kind of recommendation, we run past our city attorney, but this body makes recommendation to our ordinance committee, which is comprised of city council members. And the ordinance committee forwards it on to the city council if they so choose so we just make recommendations, but any recommendations we have, we run past our new city attorney for those reasons. But Mayor, so if we're gonna chop up this ordinance, I don't know if we accomplished this last year, but am I right in understanding that you wanna put all things related to sidewalks in the sidewalk ordinance?
Yes, because
Okay.
that makes sense, because, actually we did, because that's, I don't know if it's safety or sanitation, I can't remember what it was called, but there was like weird, it was just where,
That was the one, for sure.
like a hodgepodge of ordinances, and we kind of moved them around, because I remember the ordinance committee, we talked about that, and moved some of them where they needed to be, so, I mean, we did work on that, but I don't think that,
Well, let's take a look at we'll take a look at the minutes and see where we ended up there. Usually, this committee, as the winter, or the months get colder, we kind of shift into ordinance.
Right.
Because, and then we have recommendations that might be unrolled the next spring. That's just typically what this committee did.
I don't think Sarah and Kayla, you weren't here last week, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So let's put that on the agenda. If commissioners want to look at the sidewalk ordinance, red pen them, so to speak, we can look at the minutes and see where we ended off. I can get with Bill Gamble to see what the ordinance committee did, if they took action, or where they're at with that. So we kind of work it from both sides that way. So we'll make sure that's on,
I'll put the noxious weeds one on there as well. And I'm just gonna say this right now so I don't forget about it. I wanna talk about businesses directly related to the noxious weeds. So I'll put that on the agenda next time.
as a ordinance revision or just in general?
Look at it,
Okay.
because I think they should be a little bit different than a residential home and a business for noxious weeds.
Okay. So we'll put those two on November, and we'll make sure that we send out copies of ordinances related to commission members. Again, just a reminder, we're not having an email conversation about this, but we'll just give you a copy so that you can red pen it.
Good. Anything else?
And then real quick, my part of this is the commission gave me some direction to look at adding into an ordinance prohibiting vacant buildings sitting vacant for X amount of months or years. I'm gonna work with Jerry Blue to make sure there's nothing already in the property maintenance code. And then I wanna bring back, hopefully in November, specific language that this commission could either approve, chop up, deny. If so, if they choose to approve it, then we would forward that on to the ordinance committee. Does that make sense? I don't wanna bring you 3 ordinances and we chop it up in a meeting. I wanna bring you very specific language saying, here's where I recommend looking at other community language. Do you like this language? Is this approved to forward on to the ordinance committee to see if they have an appetite to make said changes? Is everyone agreeable to that process?
Yep. Moving on to short-term rental discussion, at a NRBC perspective. Last meeting, I think Mary sent around the Good Neighbor Guide that was from Teresa. So I was just giving an opportunity if anybody had any comments on that for Teresa while she's here. And if not, no big deal. Nothing? Okay. Now, comments on short-term rental policy. I saw that was on the next council meeting agenda, is that right? A couple things that I mentioned to Teresa, outside of this meeting was if we can, and Toby indicated this a little bit too, just from answering your question, was all of it seems like most of the blight concerns are with rentals, right? Like most of them. So what about trying to introduce some sort of beautification plan into this rental policy that we're adopting? It seems like once we get the short-term rental policy, it's also gonna be all one thing, the long-term rentals and short-term rentals, right? So what about giving us a little bit more of a purpose and having it required by that policy, the short-term rental, long-term rental policy, to submit to us like a beautification plan of some of the defects of the exterior and maybe like the sidewalk area of that property, and then just making sure that they accomplish that plan before they get their rental permit or whatever.
What I would recommend is you look at our rental inspection format. I think you'll find a lot of that stuff overlaps. We did this 3 years ago with Safe Bill. Let me supply the commission with the rental inspection form.
I think for safety, I think you're right, but I think for maybe some of the blight that is like maybe on the gray area, or maybe some of the weeds, some overgrown areas, some sidewalks that are busted up. I mean, that I feel like that's an opportunity. If we're gonna introduce a policy, that's an opportunity for us to try to clean up these properties individually, I guess. But we can, yeah, if some of that is in I mean, I have a rental in town. It's the only reason I'm able to be on this commission, but I mean, I don't think I've seen that, honestly, the policy that has that stuff. Go ahead, Toby.
The majority of what, at least what I see driving around, and I do it 3 days a week, is your short-term rentals are basically rentals that, you know, are flipping a lot, mainly consistent in the summertime. They may turn into a little bit more of a long-term rental over the winter, maybe if people can get somebody in there, but I don't see a huge blight issue in that area. I don't see a weed issue, I don't see a sidewalk. I mean, it's very, very well taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
It's your long-term rentals that really need to be addressed when it comes to your situation of the blight in the home and the sidewalk and the weeds, and, you know, that's probably 90% of what I'm citing or sending letters to is your long-term stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't know if you want to divide that up differently and say, hey, your long-term is where we need to, your short-term stuff is your VRBOs, probably your Airbnbs and stuff. That's, you know, that's flipping. People aren't going to come and stay in a place that's
Well, I know
taken care of.
there are some of those in town, though. I mean, I just think if we're gonna be introducing this policy, it's probably our only chance to put something in here. Even, you know, if we put this plan into that policy and then it never gets used, so be it. That's fine. But at least it's in there before, you know, ground zero. That was kind of my thought. And maybe, like you said, maybe 90% of them are fine. But what about those 10%? Are we just gonna live with?
Right, and yeah, you do have to address it, and I think, you know, when I start this winter going on the short-term inspections, I'll know a lot more and help Jerry out a little bit, you know, trying to get through these, you know, every 3 years is quite a task, and I know that he's trying the best he can to get to them, but we'll know a lot more, I think, when we really get in this winter and start hammering away at this.
Instead of creating new language for rental policy, why don't we just recommend the policy that you can't successfully register your rental unless you eradicate all the blight issues that are already ordinanced?
Is that in there? I mean,
The mayor and I, this came up like 3 or 4 years ago. We looked at it and we saw, I don't want to speak for you, Mayor, but we saw a lot of blight issues on the rental checklist. Because say, hey, there's this, how are we approving these rentals that have currently existing blight? Now, we have a third party at the time that was doing that, which, you know, anytime you contract out services, you lose a little bit of control over that. We have those in-house. Let me find that and send that to commission members so you can make informed decisions. You might look at that and say, this is not good enough, let's do more. Or you might look at that and say, okay, this is good enough. But my thought is, if we're looking at whether we're gonna register a rental and they have, I wouldn't think a blighted rental would be registered under the city ordinance. I don't see a path where you would say, you have a certificate to rent, but you have current blight issues. I don't know that, you know, with a blight violation. I think that should be the stance we take.
I think so too. But I mean, not only the blight, but, you know, sidewalks, like we said. I mean, I know most of the Airbnbs are on the north side. You know, me personally doing city municipal projects, all the sidewalk on the north side has stamps in the concrete from 1900. So there's 2-inch thick sidewalk from 125 years ago. I mean, to me, like, maybe if there is one crack, maybe we should make them replace that. I mean, it's only, you know, a couple $100 to do that. Same thing with like trees. You know, the tree commission seems to have some struggle trying to get a lot of trees planted every year in the city. Maybe it's an opportunity to require them to plant a tree if it's needed on the property. I don't know.
I think we're walking a fine line with the sidewalk thing. I mean,
Just bringing it up.
Listen, I don't disagree with you that there's some sidewalks that are out of control within the city, but if you, there has to be some sort of fairness to this. And if you go up to one homeowner and say, your concrete is stamped from 1898, whatever, you have to replace these 6 squares of sidewalk, how is that fair to not go to every homeowner and say that? You know what I mean? And the reality is, now, I've said this many times, I've said it at city council meetings, a lot of these people do not have the funds or the means to eradicate the blight they have, which is why we need to bring back curbside junk pickup once or twice a year. Saying it out loud here. Because people don't have the means. They don't even have the means to get their junk to the armory. It's a great idea. I think it's a step in the right direction. But some people do not have a trailer. They don't have a truck. Some people don't even have a car to get their junk there. So that's one reason we have the blight issue we have. So now, not only do they have blight, but they have cracked up sidewalks. They certainly can't replace 6 panels of sidewalks. And my point to what you're saying, Lucas, is, yeah, if you have one sidewalk, you know, you walk down and there's like some that are like this. They're like way out of control because of tree roots and everything else. But you come to me and tell me I have to fix my 6 panels of sidewalks. Why doesn't everyone else? That's going to be my question.
Well, and that's kind of my point about the sidewalk ordinance too. It says right now that that's true.
Agreed. I agree with you.
So
yes.
If that's not true, then it shouldn't be in there, right? And I understand the liability part of it too. And I mean, that's why we gotta kind of work at trying to change it to be more realistic on what it's actually being enforced as. I was trying to get the overkill portion, you know, obviously a crack in an old sidewalk, that's not, I mean, whatever. But I'm saying stuff like, okay, if it's a short-term rental and they're applying for a permit for the short-term rental and then all of their sidewalk is overgrown, you know, that's another case, right? Could they clean that up?
Yeah, I think we might be talking about 2 different things. So overgrown sidewalks, and when you have the bushes sticking over the sidewalk, that's something that we do enforce on a complaint basis. We do not enforce it when the sidewalk is unsafe. That is not the police department's prerogative. Meaning there's the 2-inch rule for risk management on sidewalks. When a sidewalk is unsafe, meaning it's dilapidated, we don't enforce that. We enforce when something is obstructed. Does that make sense? I don't know if you guys are talking about different things.
Yeah, and I don't think it's an enforcement thing, but like, I'm saying like, even, like we talked about, what was that street? Lexington that has overgrown sidewalk? So if we know that, I guess the question is that are we going to that homeowner and saying, you have to clean up the sidewalk? Probably not, right?
Yeah, I don't think any municipality has that level of enforcement.
So, well, I mean, it's reported at a council meeting, but.
This is true.
What is it?
I-
What'd you say?
Like the sidewalk being overgrown with, you know, grass and whatnot, there's only a 1 foot strip on it. What you're saying is we just need to, someone needs to report that and then it'll get,
We would talk to homeowner, yeah. What I'm talking about is the police department not, we don't enforce to the point where we make homeowners replace the sidewalk. Clearing the sidewalk is a much lighter lift than paying a bunch of money to replace it. Clearing the sidewalk, it takes labor, maybe some tools. Replacing it takes significant money, so I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. The police department, you know, if Sarah lives in her house and she has a sidewalk that's cracked and 4 inches high, the police department doesn't go to her and say, you're gonna get a ticket unless you replace that sidewalk. That is not our position. But if there's a bush overgrown or roots over it, then that's something different.
yeah, and like you said, you're a little bit more reactive because it's on, when it's reported, right? You're not going, there's no
Yeah, we don't
officer
take,
going
yeah, we don't take a
around.
proactive approach because we don't have enough resources
There's
to do
no way you
that.
could,
Right.
right? So my point is, in this policy, you know, rather than waiting for someone to report and complain about it, you know, just introduce the fact that they have to, you know, clean the sidewalk up at a bare minimum. That's
Yeah,
all
okay,
I'm
now,
saying.
now I'm tracking. Make that part of a checklist
Yeah.
Yes.
for the rental inspection.
rental inspection.
Yeah, okay, I understand
No,
that.
not for the rental inspection,
Now
for
it
the,
makes more sense.
well, I mean, that too, but for the,
Well, the
when
ordinance
they
is,
when they get a short-term rental permit or a long-term rental permit.
that's the same thing. I think we're talking about the same thing.
That's the same thing,
To
okay.
get a permit, to be approved by the city,
Yeah.
rental inspector comes out there and there's a big checklist, which I'll give to you, of things that you have to have before the inspector will say, yes, you are legally allowed to rent. Making sure those items are on the checklist is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of creating a whole new thing.
I wasn't sure if the rental inspection was like more times
You're
than
talking about all rentals, right?
all rentals. Long and
okay,
short term,
okay.
yeah.
And I was at that city council meeting, but I can't remember, how often do people have to renew their rental?
It's 3 years.
So at the bare minimum, every 3 years, a property would be re-inspected then, correct?
That's the idea.
So if, you know, you went in now, you fulfilled the checklist, but over time, because of your tenants, whatever else, I mean, and you're trying to do some remediating things, but, you know, stuff happened, at least in 3 years, that property would
Could
be
get remediated.
re-inspected again
Yeah.
at a more in-depth look. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and if, you know, now that we have the building inspector that's doing that, you know, if that is enforced, then they will not get a permit.
Correct.
So that, I mean,
Yeah.
that will clean it up a lot, I think, which is great.
And it would be kind of like what Toby was saying in terms of ticketing, it's motivation.
Yeah.
You know, because your
Well, the
your
landlord-
renewal is coming up.
That, I mean, the landlord is gonna want their
That's what I'm saying. It's
building
it's
rented, so they're gonna
motivation.
get it done. I
It's
mean,
motivation, yeah.
sounds like some of that's already happening. I just wanted to say what I had to say
Maybe it
about.
needs to be more a streamlined, like a process, a streamlined process.
Mhm.
It's gonna get better.
It'll get there. Now that we
Yeah.
have the appropriate employees on and stuff, I'm sure they're gonna get into a groove and check all the boxes.
Yeah. And so what we can do is, the minimum standards for rental property are listed in the 1480 codified ordinance city of Manistee, which is the property maintenance code. What I'm hearing is just make sure those issues that we see are on our rental inspection process, so at least once every 3 years, those issues can be addressed.
Yeah, and I think it's easy enough to say any ordinances listed within the city ordinances.
I think that's very reasonable. Should someone use a residence to gain money, I think it's very reasonable. So we'll look at, internally, we'll look at that process and that checklist, which I'm trying to find, and I'll work with Jerry Blue with that to make sure that that list that he looks at has what this commission is talking about.
All right, I'm done blabbing about that. Does anybody else have anything else?
I think it's a great conversation.
All right, last item here, special meeting on October 21st at 9 a.m. for, yeah, go ahead, Teresa.
So yes, we're still
requesting the meeting October 21st, if that works out for everybody. This Friday is when all the applications will be coming in. We've had a great turnout last week. Tracy Davis and I taught 2 different classes over at the college, one in the evening. We only had 5 people show up that one, but Friday we had 29 people show up, and they actually stood up, clapped, they thanked us immensely, that we were very patient, walked through every single page. It took over 2.5 hours, but they all sat there with us and went through it all. I've got appointments scheduled for the rest of this week and some phone calls, but we're looking forward to seeing people on Friday. We've told them, get there early. I mean, that's about all we can say to them. And that starts at 8 o'clock. So then after that, when that comes in, we're gonna start going through, like the first 20 applicants, and then we will make sure that the items of their names, social security numbers, dependents, and all of that is kind of blocked out. We've got a special marker that will do that, or to block all that out. Then we'll be coming to you on that date, and that's when we'll have you all start to review them. I'm not sure if you'll just give like 2 to each of you and just start to review thing, or how we're gonna do that. Tracy and I still kind of need to decide, but we want to have your input. We want you to check over Tracy and I's work and do that, so.
So I'll make a motion to add a special meeting on October 21st at 9 a.m. to review Chill Grant applications.
I second it.
Do a roll call, I guess.
Lucas Richardson,
Yes.
Jermaine Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathleen Grabowski,
Yes,
Sarah Harless.
Yes.
Jess Stallings. Kayla Bullock.
Yes.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
Public comment, any other public comment? The minutes should say that, please. All right, good of the order. Jess? Kathy?
nothing.
Jermaine?
I just have a question on the paint for the mural on First Street. Do we still have that, and do you think we could tint it to look like cement?
It's a great question. Anything that was purchased and given to us is down at the DPW. I have no idea. I'll look into it. I think we used all.
I don't
Do
remember.
we have any?
I'll take a look at it.
I'm just sick of looking at that wall like that, so I was thinking if we could just make it look like cement and just paint it for now before it gets too cold.
The white wall,
Yeah.
I'll take a look at it. You don't want it the color that we already have? You don't
Want to
care?
make a blank gray landscape for a mural to go on.
Hey, I'll take a look and see what we have left over. I know, and see what we can do.
I just have 2 things. One is if, during the mural, but if that wall is not owned by the city, why are we so concerned about this? I don't know why we keep going back to this. This should be up to the owner.
Well, because he donated it to us to do a mural on.
Right.
That's why.
And it was the city's recommendation that if we're gonna be involved in it, that we should make sure that we have a policy in place before we get involved in it again.
Maybe the new attorney will tell you different because it's privately owned.
Okay, that clears that up for me. Thank you. Go ahead.
No, well, I think the answer we need, I'm hearing, and I could be wrong, is why do we need to get involved in what a private citizen does in private property?
Well-
And the mayor's point is, well, that private property, that private citizen gave that to a public committee to do as they choose, so the mural is almost a risk management measure so that we don't have, I don't know, trademark infringement or anything offensive, or, so I think that's what I'm hearing, that's why we have a policy for private property. I don't know, this would be a city attorney, if the city could pass a policy that prohibits someone from painting something on their private property. I don't know either way. That's a city attorney question for sure. I don't think that's what we're asking here. It's a question is, why are we getting involved in this? It's because that subject donated that to this public body to put a mural on it. So we need a policy that helps guide us in that process. Is that a gist of it?
Yeah.
That makes sense? Not whether you agree or not, but does that make sense? Well, okay. It's tricky.
My second question is, the, down on, US 31 and River Street, so where House of Flavors used to be, the small brick wall with the wrought iron, who owns that?
It's the city.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones that got blown apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, I don't know the status of that, but, I remember it coming up in a staff meeting about, a car hit them, demolished all of them, and I think they were working on insurance on that.
We filed immediately on that. I don't know what's,
Yeah,
we wouldn't wait for probably insurance to get that fixed. It's, I don't know who organized it.
yeah,
I'm guessing our DPW coordinates through Spicer maybe for that?
I think that, I think that was, I don't know, there's a lot of emails about that, but
Okay.
it might be on hold until the Gateway project, unfortunately.
And I realize that we'd have no control over the Gateway project or the bridge, but I do know, again, within the community, there's a lot of complaints about that corner, because it's a high-profile corner, and I think as a city, if there's something that we own, that we can at least make better on that corner, we should be making the effort to do so, but it sounds like it's in progress, just waiting on other things.
I'm not saying it's, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't disagree with that.
Would that be considered blight?
Well, that opens up another conversation that I've heard before. If the city, is the city property considered blight if they don't maintain their property? I don't.
I just wondered, because it is kind of like broken.
I think the best thing that we can do is this commission, we can forward the comments of this commission onto the DPW and the city manager, just so he hears those things, to make sure that he's hearing what he needs to hear. And there could be very well a plan, hey, we're having that replaced next spring. We don't know.
Yeah, it could be next week.
So let's see if I can get some answers about that, and then make sure that your comments are passed on to him and the DPW and Spicer.
Great,
Yeah, let's fight.
thanks, chief. Anything else?
No, thank you.
I have one thing, real quick. So, I think either last meeting or a couple meetings ago, I pitched to see if anybody agreed with me about dune grass on US 31. There was not a whole lot of traction, if at all any. So, I thought about that a little bit more over the last week or so, and one thing I noticed, down the highway between 8th Street all the way down to First, obviously First to Third is going to be a little bit harder to implement what I'm going to say. There's almost no trees.
Correct.
There's almost no trees. So one thing that I was going to recommend, maybe this is a good opportunity for us to collaborate with the tree commission, and you know, maybe when they're designing the highway there, one thing we could recommend from the city would be to plant trees that were, you know, capped at a certain height. You know, there's certain trees that don't grow over 20 feet or whatever, and aren't going to cause too much of a nuisance for leaf pickup. But I think that would really beautify that corridor, honestly, and kind of just isolate. You're driving on the highway, you're not looking at some of the dilapidated buildings, unfortunately. So that was just something I
like that
thought
idea,
about.
and I think that would add more texture to the landscape rather than just doing grass.
And eventually, you know, we talked about implementing banners everywhere, right? That would be great. You know, you have tree banner, I mean, that would look really good, I think, so.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot better.
Do you think they would hold up with winter salt being?
The trees,
Yeah.
so I think it wouldn't be much different than the rest of the city, I guess. But they would be a little further away from the curb line than most of the city,
Okay.
5 feet or so.
So how would you like to proceed? Would you like to coordinate with the tree commission, get their 2 cents and what they think would?
I think now that I know that there's no more comments on the master plan, the next task is to create that map, and then
Okay.
I provide that to you, and then if that goes to the city manager or city council, that is what I envisioned. This was our year's worth of recommendations, you know.
Yeah, I think, yeah, okay. I think the path might be to find a way to get that to city council to accept that plan. I don't know, but let me get with the city manager, see what he thinks the best path is for
Okay.
that. Okay.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Adjourned.